Big Country in a big country. Of course, their lead singer Stuart Adamson was to take his life. Very, very sad story. But the reason I played that for you is because I want to play you a little interview that I recorded yesterday with Clive Parker, or Clive Parker Sharp. He was a drummer. He was very active in the punk era, post-punk era as well. He was in the Members. He was in Big Country. He was the founding member of Big Country. He was in the Scary Thieves. He was a member of Spiz Energy as well. Anyway, he is also a writer, and he's bringing a show called ConeBoy to Watford next week, so I caught up with him to find out a little bit about the show, and I fired some quick fire 2 or 3 word questions at him, starting with, who are you?
Clive Parker Sharp, and I was a drummer, and now one of my main instruments is guitar, and I'm a writer and author.
The 9-year-old me was
looking forward a great deal, and I would say that I was really into music at the time, and luckily I had 2 older brothers, one who listened to a lot of Tamla Motown and used to buy brand new imports, and I had another who was into rock music, so I had that kind of fantastic mix of music at the time, which probably, gave me a really strong grounding in the music experience. So probably the 9-year-old me was, like any 9-year-old, quite confused, full of a lot of stuff rushing around in their bloodstream, and wanting to get out there and experience the world. So in a way, the modern me is very connected to that original 9-year-old. Funnily enough, the 9-year-old me did their first gig at the age of 9, which was at my brother's wedding, which would have been in 1969. I had a little snare drum, and, I would say that, musical equipment was very expensive at the time, so it was quite unusual. I had a little snare drum, so I was very lucky, and there was a piano player on stage, and I took my snare drum and went up there very excitedly, and that was my first gig at the age of 9, and I've never looked back.
Punk was
Punk was DIY, and I'd say that at the time you had these massive bands like Queen and Elton John, which in a way you didn't have a chance of getting anywhere close to. And hearing the Ramones for the first time, and hearing these great tracks coming through on the John Peel show, it really influenced one into picking up an instrument and doing something. It made it possible. That's what punk rock was all about, and which feeds through to my current projects.
For me, the greatest punk record was,
I would say, probably the most influential one for me is Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers, Radio On, because it was really the first punk record that was played in the UK. Probably the first punk band I saw was Jane County and the Electric Chairs at the Reading Festival in 1972, I think it was, and they were bottled off after half a song, and I knew the tides were changing. Aerosmith were headlining, but really the big band for me were Jane County and the Electric Chairs, and I went out and bought their puke-coloured vinyl record, the title of which I can't mention on air, I'm afraid.
I was a founding member of Big Country, and they were one of the most underrated bands of all time because...
Well, I think it's very interesting what happened with Big Country. The original sentiment, I think, got filtered out. Obviously, there was a very big hit with In a Big Country, and then Stuart was under pressure to replicate that. And obviously, we know the tragedy that happened as a result of all the pressures that came from that, and the people that surrounded Stuart, which I think tried to exploit that. And, I think Big Country have gone down in people's estimation because of the sadness that surrounds that tragedy. And but the original sentiment still stays there, which is a folk concept of telling a story through words and music, and that, you know, as I said before, that feeds through to now in what I'm doing with this ConeBoy show, because it's all about, you know, that travelling minstrel idea. And Stuart Adamson always used to say to me that he was a troubadour, that he was a travelling minstrel, and I'm continuing that that message, that sentiment now.
I toured with some amazing bands, and my favourite tour story is
I met the Carpenters, and you know, some of your listeners may not, you know, remember the Carpenters now, but they were absolutely enormous at the time. And I was on tour in the States with a band called Spiz Energy, who were quite big at the time, and we were being shown round the A&M lots, which is the old Charlie Chaplin Hollywood lots in LA. And the A&R guy said to me and Lou from the band, who's in Pill now, I should say, do you want to come in and meet the Carpenters? And he looked through the window of the studio, and there was Karen Carpenters, and we went in, and these two young punks from the UK amazingly met the Carpenters, and they were just as surprised as us.
Writing is the same as drumming, because
there is obviously, you know, the rhythmic element, and that goes through all of my work. You know, my first book, you know, had that feeling, which came out in 2012, and this one even more so. And you know, I would say, you know, drummers are probably put down as the one in the band who are, you know, maybe the most Neanderthal. But you know, I think probably it's been proved that, and you know, through the new Talking Heads book and so on, that drummers really do have something interesting to say in their narrative.
ConeBoy is
the story of a boy who's born into fame because of the way he looks. It's from my ConeBoy novel. It's very much about the fame game and family, and how this young boy is exploited by his parents. It started out as some book readings and has kind of, you know, blasted or mutated into this fully fledged show, which we're taking out on the road. It's very much a family story. I think it's very poignant to now, in these sort of dark times that we're living through, because all the talk is about family and bubbles, and I think it's very relevant. So, you know, we're very much looking forward to people coming down to the show and with their families to the ConeBoy show next week.
Now, I'm told that the show is COVID safe. So if you're in Watford, in and around Hertfordshire, you can go down to the Pump House Theatre, which is, I'm laughing because I performed there like when I was about 12, I think. It's a great venue just behind, opposite Tesco's, between Next and Tesco's on the high street there. ConeBoy is the name of the show. It kicks off at 7 o'clock next Saturday, the 3rd of October. Tickets are £8.50. If you want to find out more, the easiest way is just do a search for ConeBoy Watford, ConeBoy, ConeBoy Watford. It's a spoken word drama show featuring Clive Parker Sharp. And of course, listen, he's got a lot to say, having been at the forefront of the punk movement in those bands that he talked about there. And this is bringing his second book alive. It should be a good show. Next Saturday, the 3rd of October in Watford. He had an extensive tour planned and booked, but of course with the pandemic he's had to change it. But I'm told that the show next week at the Pump House in Watford is going to be entirely COVID friendly.